Today on Harmonizing Your Horse's Health, we're going to look at another aspect of saddle fit. This is an aspect that's often overlooked when we talk about saddle fit. Last session, we talked about the anatomy and how important the horse's anatomy, what happens at the poll, what happens at the neck, thoracic, lumbar spine, how the pelvis moves, how that all affects how your saddle fits and how your saddle has to fit. Today, we're going to talk about gravity. None of us can fight gravity. We all have to deal with gravity every day. Gravity wants things to be perpendicular. Everything that gravity has an effect on will end up perpendicular at some point in time. If I hold this stirrup this way, let go of it, it will end up perpendicular. Okay? Why is that important in saddle fit? It's important in saddle fit because we know, we've all been to the saddle fit seminars, we've all know that we have to have the saddle behind the scapula. So here on this horse, he's real tender, but we slide this saddle back until it finds a home. This saddle actually fits this horse fairly well if it could sit here. Now, every horse has an indentation right here. It's a girth groove. That's where the girth will end up. As you can see, perpendicular is way in front of the saddle. So if I put this saddle on here, it won't stay because gravity wants it to be perpendicular. Well, it's not going to slide back on the belly because his belly gets bigger. So what's going to happen is if I saddle this horse up, as you ride this horse, after about 5 or 6 minutes, your saddle's going to get loose. And you're going to think it's because he held his breath when you saddled him up. Then as he relaxes, he starts to let go of his breath, starts to let some of that air out of his lungs, and then you can get off and tighten the cinch up. But what actually happened was as you rode, gravity took everything into account and moved the saddle forward. And now, gravity likes that saddle there, okay? But old Robert doesn't. His ears are pinned back, okay? He doesn't like it because gravity said this saddle doesn't fit him, okay? So not only does gravity affect the cinch, it will affect the stirrup leathers. Now you will notice that when we fit these saddles, the first way we want to fit them was with no padding on at all. Because if your saddle doesn't fit without any padding, there's no way you can make it fit with padding. Later on, we will look at some ways to help saddle fit, but we have to get close without padding so that then we can make sure to make a saddle fit. So as we look at this Western saddle, here again, we're going to look at gravity. And you notice this cinch is pretty much hanging perpendicular, and it's right here in his girth groove. So if this saddle actually fit him right there, it would be all right. But if, as you notice, it sticks back here too far. So gravity will pull it up forward so that it's not here, okay? But now it's too far forward. So when we cinched him up, our girth would look like that. As we rode, that saddle would slide back. Now it's jamming in up here and jamming in here. Okay, so that's the first way that gravity affects us. Now, the second way that gravity affects us is with the stirrups. We're going to put a chapstick in our saddle on the seat. That is where the rider's hip bones will end up. Okay? We're going to bring a rider in here in a minute, and we're going to take a look at that. But the rider's hip bones will be right here. Gravity says that's where her hip bones will be. She can try to slide forward, she can try to slide back, but gravity's going to bring her hip bones to the lowest part of the saddle. Okay, isn't that going to be the same no matter what? Well, no, let's just look at this. If we slide this saddle forward a little bit, that slid back. Oliver doesn't like it very much. But if we slide it back, that low point of the saddle comes forward a little bit. Okay? Well, why is that important? The reason it's important is because for rider comfort, gravity. Okay? So if our hip bone's here, we want our heel to be behind it, or right underneath it, sorry. So draw a line perpendicular, stirrups are perpendicular. This rider could ride comfortably in this saddle with very good form, and gravity would assist them. Now, if this gentleman was going to ride in this saddle, we can see gravity, okay, put the ball of his toe in the stirrup. Gravity puts his heel way behind him. He's going to be riding forward because that's what gravity is going to tell him to do. Okay? It's going to tip his body forward. Okay. If we had somebody that had a smaller foot than the first rider, they would end up sitting back. So, if you find that you're sitting back too far in the saddle, no matter how hard you try, it might not be your fault. It might be gravity. Let's take a look at that in an English saddle. All right, so now we brought an English saddle out here. We put back on Robert, and we have our chapstick up here. And if we can see, this little foot would fit fairly decent in here. And the heel would be right underneath the butt. If we go to the medium-sized foot, it still works okay. Now, if we get the big foot again, not so much. Now, this big guy would be hard to fix. If we needed to fix it a little bit for the little guy, we could go with a wider stirrup. Okay? See how this stirrup's wider? That would bring back just a little bit and make it easier for this person to ride. Now, what I want to do is this actually belongs to one of our riders here, this saddle, so I want to put her on this saddle. Okay, so now we brought the horse out that the saddle fits a little better. Our center of gravity is further back, our low spot on the saddle. So now let's have our rider get back on here. Use a mounting block and always a helmet. And now her heel is under her hip bone. So remember, saddle fit. Gravity can be our friend and help our riding technique and help our saddle fit better and stay where we want it, or it can be our enemy and it can hurt our riding technique and make our saddle move.